We want nothing to do with a backward-looking idea of sovereignty. We remain absolutely committed to the ideals of the European Union.
Now, Dublin police have cleared hundreds of migrants from a makeshift campsite in the centre of Dublin on Sunday. Around 200 asylum seekers were moved from the camp outside of a government office to a new site outside of the Irish capital. Now, the asylum seekers have been camping outside the International Protection Office on Mount Street for months, awaiting their applications for international protection to be processed. Well, joining me now to discuss this is former Labour advisor Kevin Moore. Kevin, welcome to the show. Astonishing scenes. It looked like a sort of social cleansing. Bulldozers taking these tents, putting them into the back of garbage trucks, moving these men, ferrying them out of town on coaches 20 kilometres away, so they didn't spoil the St Patrick's Day parade pictures. But now they're all traipsing back into Dublin, Kevin, and worse, the world's media is watching. What the hell is going on?
It's a bit of a shambles in Dublin. There are several things going on. I mean, what happened over the weekend, and I saw footage of this, somebody walked along the whole length of this kind of, we would have called these cardboard cities, I guess, in the 80s, but the kind of these pop-up tents that people have got. One after the other, after the other, after the other. A lot of them asylum seekers that are in Ireland. The Irish government doesn't have the capacity to deal with the numbers of migrants that it's getting, and rather than do something about the supply that it's getting, it just keeps letting these people come in and doesn't have anywhere to put them. And it's causing a major problem in Irish society. We've seen lots of disturbances, lots of protests, some buildings being burnt that were earmarked to put asylum seekers in. Now, this is a very febrile situation in Ireland, and it stems from the fact, two things. One, that the housing market in Ireland is completely out of control. So over the last decade, for example, wages have grown about 27%. House prices have grown about 75% and rents 90%. It's a really difficult situation. And it reflects actually the strength of the Irish economy. The Irish economy is booming, but supply and demand in the housing market isn't kept pace. And the government's frankly asleep on the watch and not doing very much about it. And it also reflects what's happening is that Ireland's political elite and some of its media elite as well are quite happy to allow this situation to continue, to sort of burnish their liberal credentials, because some of the leading lights in the Irish government, frankly, have got their eyes on big international jobs. So they're out there writing checks that then the Irish people are expected to pay. And there's this massive disconnect between the political elite at the top of this current government, which is led by the two old parties of Irish politics, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Leo Varadkar, people may be familiar with, Micheál Martin as well as the leader of Fianna Fáil. You know, they're looking past Irish politics and for a big international job. That's what's going on. And they, as I say, they are going around the place making commitments that Ireland cannot deliver sustainably. And that's the nub of the problem.
I want to commend the valiant efforts of the brave people of Fermoy, who have manned the tent throughout some harsh weather and many storms for almost 18 weeks, morning, noon and night, to try and stop the further plantation of their town. Now, Fermoy is a town that's taken far more imported military-aged men than any other town in Ireland. But alas, their efforts and voices were once again not listened to by the criminals within our dail. Abbeyville today was planted by at least 40, mostly male migrants, and were escorted by at least 15 on Garda Siochana Vehicles and Riot Squad. To whom do these Gardaí serve? To the NGO class and the politicians, or to the Irish people? There is a storm that cannot be stopped by peaceful demonstrations. The flooding of our communities by undocumented individuals has not only stretched our resources in our communities, but it has also put our women, men, and most certainly our children in extreme dangers. Had Ireland's borders protected its people, Aisling Murphy, Aidan Moffat and Michael Schnee, along with many more, would still be alive. The crimes of open borders by imported criminals. Every individual assault, rape and murder done by an imported criminal isn't just committed by that criminal, but by the very people who profits in importing these criminals. Every NGO, politician, journalists, trade unions and community groups pushing Ireland for all is responsible for every victim of Ireland's extremely dangerous open door policy. We as a nation have a duty to protect our nation and its people by any means necessary. We have peacefully protested to close our borders. We now must discuss the next steps. We must hold all traders of ERA accountable for the crimes that they have committed in the name of international progressivism. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Greens. Fake opposition, which are Ireland's communist parties, Sinn Féin, Labour, Social Democrats, People Before Profit, etc., along with trade unions such as Forza, SIPTU, and all NGOs will be held accountable for the destruction of our country and forced plantation of its people. It's time our military and Gardaí decide what side of history do they want to stand with. It's time for all Ireland's people to decide what side of history do they want to be on. What's happening in Ireland isn't immigration, it's a plantation. And your children and their children will suffer because you're too afraid to speak up. All left-wing socialists are now fully on board with the destruction of our culture, heritage and race. It's time we made Ireland safe again. And never forget, Ireland belongs to the Irish. Éireann go bragh.